Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and I have a different kind of review for you today. That is the DUNU Vulkan in-ear monitors. Now, I don't do in-ear monitors very often, but I got the opportunity to do these because a representative from DUNU reached out to me and asked if I wanted to review these. I said sure. They sent them here, and then we didn't talk at all after that. So they've been very hands-off. DUNU has made no attempt to influence my opinion on these one way or the other. All right, so we should also bear in mind that this is the second IEM review I've ever done. The other one was the Mangird Tea V1, which I will link to in the description below. So my knowledge base about IEMs is not as robust as it is about full-size headphones. All right, but I still can make some comments about the sound and the fit and the comfort and all of that sort of thing, and so we will definitely get into all of that. All right, the DUNU Vulkan has an MSRP of $380 US. It is a 6-driver design with 2 coaxially mounted dynamic drivers, one a soft dome and the other one a titanium cone or a titanium plated cone, something like that. Okay, in there, and those handle the bass up through most of the mids, and then there are 2 balanced armature drivers in them that handle the upper mids and lower treble, and then there are 2 more balanced armatures that are the super tweeters handling the upper frequencies. They have a rated impedance of 15 ohms and a rated sensitivity of 109 decibels per milliwatt. All right, so that's a lot of the specs thing. From a build standpoint, the shells here are a machined aluminum. They use MMCX connectors on the cabling and all of that. I will go into more detail about the build and that sort of thing here in another clip from another vantage point, and that will come up right after some shameless self-promotion. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do the shameless self-promotion, then I'll talk more about the build and the features and all of that, and then we will come back on camera here and I will talk about the sound. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show. All right, we'll try this vantage point to talk about the build of the DUNU Vulkans here. So first of all, here is the shell. All right, and we have MMCX connector here on both pieces. All right, and then we have the nozzle here. You can see about how far it sticks out and so forth. So all that. So that's what it looks like there. Yeah, we have a little bit of venting going on here. Okay, but I mean, nice shell. The weight is not bad. Okay, that sort of thing. Here's what it looks like. This is a spin fit CP143, I think. I will double check that and put a link to these tips there, but I wanted to show what it's like with the tip on and all of that. And let's contrast that real quick. Like, here is my Mangird Tea V1. Okay, its shell, which, I mean, it has a nice shell. I have a review of this up I will put in the description. And, you know, again, we have some sort of venting here. See that this one has the 2-pin connector, so that's one difference. Okay, and then, like, the nozzle here that connects, and so if we could kind of see how well this will work. Hold these up like so that we see about how far those stick out compared to each other roughly. I know it's not perfect to give an idea, but the point that I want to make here is, here they are with tips, final E-Series tips on the Mangird. Okay, the point I want to make here is, let's see if I get that lined up. It's going to be hard to tell from my angle. There, okay. But you can see that the tip of the Mangird sticks out farther than the tip of the DUNU. So, like, this goes deeper into the ear than this one does. And so this is like more of a deep insert, and this is more of a shallow insert. I found that to have real comfort differences, where I found the DUNU to be much more comfortable because the deeper part here just gets really irritating to me after a while. All of that. So those are the earbuds themselves. I shouldn't say earbuds. Those are the IEMs themselves and like how they're built and what they look like there. Here is the cable for the DUNU. Okay, all right, got the hook curl thing around the ears again, which is pretty common, and the MMCX connectors. I did notice these MMCX were super tight when I first started trying to pop these on and off. They did loosen a little bit. They're not loose. They still take a bit of a snap, but they're in there. Anyway, this nice, you know, multi-conductor braid going on. This cable does tangle a little bit, so that's something to keep in mind. Not horribly, but it does a little bit. But there is a thing I really like about it, though. DUNU does with this. So this is the amp end of the cable, and it has this little spring-loaded sleeve deal on it, and it has this proprietary, at least I think it's proprietary, 4-pin system in there, and that is because you get 3 right angle adapters, and then you get this 3.5 millimeter to 6.35 millimeter here. So you get this right angle connector that is a 2.5 millimeter TRRS balanced, right? And you see how that fits into the headphone cable right there. You get 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced, and you get 3.5 millimeter single ended, and then they also bundle in this 6.35 millimeter adapter. You can use that too. I think this modular cabling system is actually really cool, and I've used it a bunch to be able to swap out the different things that I plug this into. My one complaint, I ended up using these IEMs a lot when I would go to the gym, and this Velcro thing right here, which helps you like coil this thing up and keep it coiled, but this Velcro loves to stick to mesh gym shorts. Okay, just gonna point that out. So I may actually end up taking it off eventually, because for the most part it ends up just sticking to my shorts in uncomfortable ways. All right, I think that's probably good for this view and showing off the build of the Vulkan. All right, I will be back on camera in just a moment here to discuss potentially other features, but mostly sound. So let's do that. All right, let's get to the meat of it, and that is, of course, the sound. All right, real quick, the test gear that I used for this, these got some time off of the FIO M11 Plus digital audio player, which I either have a review that will be out by the time this video releases or will come out shortly after this review releases. I'm not sure yet, so check the links down below, see if that's there. Otherwise, be on the lookout for that coming very soon. I also tested these off of my Canon N6 Mark II DAP with EO2 module. They got some run off of the Cord Hugo 2. I also used them in a desktop setting, plugging them into a Lake People G111 amplifier, which was fed by a Schiit Bifrost 2/64 DAC. And then I would say the most of the time that I used them, I would just wear them when I went to the gym, and powered them off of a Radsound Ear Studio 100 little Bluetooth DAC amp connected to my Samsung Galaxy S22 Plus smartphone, okay, running in LDAC. Okay, so those were the signal chains that I would use for these to do the testing. Now, sound signature wise, they are very close to the most recent Harman curve tuning, I think, where there's a bit of an elevated bass shelf in the sub bass, then the mid bass, and then it's not a scoop, but it's down a little bit lower level in through the lower or the upper mid bass in through the mids. And then there's that ear gain region, which elevates a little bit starting at about 2 kilohertz. Now, this does not fit that curve perfectly. There are a couple of deviations. I think around 4 kilohertz, it dips off a little bit. But other than that, it is reasonably close, I want to say. So it's kind of like that Harman neutral tuning for the most part that I can tell, both by ear, and then after I was done with all of my listening tests, I went and looked at the frequency response graph, and turns out, yeah, it's reasonably close to that more recent Harman curve, the one that has the boosted bass anyway. So that's all here. So that's the frequency response sound signature thing here. Now, there is quite a bit of deep sub-bass extension, presence, and rumble. Like if you like a lot of deep bass presence and rumble with not killer but a little bit of slam to go with it, like that, then these fit that bill. They have some fun down in the sub-bass region there. Now, the mids are fairly well tonally balanced. I didn't notice a ton of peaks or anything in there. Again, I am Mr. Mid-range sensitivity. I very rarely noticed anything that could be like shout or honk or anything like that in the mids. So that's good, at least to my ear. And then the treble is fairly well balanced for the most part, although I think there is a little bit of sibilance that creeps up in there a little bit more than I would have expected at this price. It's not terrible, and when the sibilance happens, it's not ear-splitting or sharp. It's just kind of one of those things that is there and that I notice, but never really becomes painful or anything like that, okay? Beyond just noticing it from time to time. All right. There is pretty good resolution and texturing to the sound. Like, it's not set the world on fire resolution. Bass textures come through pretty well. Like, I was impressed with its ability to get those little subtle qualitative wavers in bass guitar string plucks and that sort of thing. And like, the resolution is pretty good, like particularly through the upper bass, lower mids, where you hear the finger action on bass guitar strings a lot, which I like. I mean, that adds a level of realism to bass guitars that I enjoy. So that was nice to hear that here as well. But I mean, going through the rest of this, the frequency spectrum, like I never got the impression that it was poorly resolving, but then other than that bass resolution, mid-bass resolution I was talking about, it never really stood out to me as being overly super resolving either. But it strikes a good balance between having all of the really super important stuff there, but not being in your face with the detail retrieval and sounding like detail forward, that sort of thing. More of a relaxed presentation to my ear there. Now, the spatial presentation is something that I want to talk about here because it's a little bit of a mixed bag. The soundstage is kind of wide. It's got a little bit of depth to it, not great depth. It's there, but not amazing, not surprising for the price, okay? And so, but then the imaging and the separating of sonic images in that sound staging, like there's kind of very far left, kind of very far right. It's backwards for you because I'm looking into the camera, okay? But you get to the point. You get the point. And then there's center. So it's a little bit like of a three blob phenomenon that you get with like the Sennheiser HD600 series of headphones, right? That are kind of known for that three blob imaging of left, right, center, and not a ton in between. Okay, that a similar effect I think was happening here with these. Not terrible. When I was at the gym, they mostly sounded great. That was not distracting at all, but of course I'm doing something else. For critical listening, that would creep in every now and then and become a little bit distracting. So it's just like the center image is also just kind of like, it's just kind of compressed in there. It's really well defined. And then there's just some space where there's not a ton going on. And then there's the left and right. So it does feel just slightly disjointed laterally in the imaging and the separation. But things are still like, when things do get positioned, either kind of in this center blobby area or over here, if there are subtle spaces in between those within its areas of comfort, it does a good job with those. Okay, so mixed bag on the staging, imaging, separation, that sort of thing. I think I mentioned a little bit, there's some decent dynamics to the sound there, like drums have a good quick snap to them. There is a fair amount of slam in the low end and all of that. So there's an element of macrodynamic fun going on here as well, which I mostly enjoyed. Okay, so all of that is pretty good. They do avoid sounding IEME to my ear. One of the reasons, there are two main reasons that I have avoided doing much with IEMs. I have tried them a few different models on different occasions, and there's usually two factors that go in. One, I really struggle with comfort with IEMs, and just getting the right ear tip and getting the right fit in my ear, where it's either it feels like it's in there snugly and not moving around, but also not too deep where it's uncomfortable, and then not falling out all of the time. Like, I have really struggled with that traditionally. And the other aspect is like, IEMs have a tonal character in my experience. Even some of the more expensive ones, like I tried Jomo Flamenco, I tried the, what was it? The NCM Bella V2. There were a couple of others in there that I want to say that are a little bit more on the more expensive side. And they had this tonal quality, particularly in like the lower treble, that just sounded small and IEM-y to me, and like metallic and all that too, in a different way than headphones do. Okay, and definitely in a different way than speakers do. These, for the most part, though, avoid that. And so I appreciate that about them, is that they don't sound overly IEM-y to me, if that means anything to you. It means something to me. And then, so that's a lot about the sound, like, and I mentioned this in the clip where I talked about the build and all that. The comfort of these, for me, is among the best. Like, I liked the sound of the Mangird Tea V1, but they stick down into the ear a little bit deeper than these do, and so they would get uncomfortable because of that after a while. Even with smaller, extra small tips, just wouldn't work well for me with these. These are small spin fits, and these finally are like strike a pretty good balance for me between feeling like they're going to stay in place, but not being in there too deep. Okay, so these, for the most part, I still don't really love, I would not choose to wear these for an extended period of time critical listening, but for an hour and a half to 2 hours at a time, while, you know, out and about or at the gym or whatever, they work pretty well in that regard, comfort-wise for me. All right, let's talk quickly about a sonic comparison with the Mangird Tea V1, because I like to do comparisons. And that's the other headphone that I've heard, and that one is also somewhere in like that $360 to $400 range. I don't remember exactly the price, but it's right in there, so very competitively priced with these. The T V1, again, I think is a little bit more U-shaped in its frequency response. It has just a little bit more sub-bass rumble. I think it has just a little bit more overall treble presence, but remarkably not as sibilant. So I think its treble is a little bit more balanced, but it is not as present or as full through the mid-range as the DUNU Vulkans are. And as far as timbre goes, I think vocals and other mid-range focused instruments, which is, you know, most of them, okay, like acoustic guitars, violins, pianos, brass instruments, you know, drums, okay, like I said, most of them, okay, sound a little bit more realistic in timbre for me here with the Vulkan than on the Mangird Tea. Okay, and then I think the Mangird Tea has a little bit breathier timbre, like with vocals, it just sounds breathier. Like it's emphasizing the fact that the singer is breathing. And I don't know that that's necessarily a resolution thing, but it's I think it's more of like a frequency response thing with a little bit more overall treble energy, even though, again, it's treble, the T's treble is a little bit more tonally balanced and a little bit less sibilant less often than this. So kind of pick your poison there, if you will. The T is going to give you a little bit more sub-bass rumble, and a little bit more and more balanced treble presentation. Whereas the Vulkan is going to be a little bit closer to the Harman target, a little bit more present and full mid-range sound. Now, from a staging standpoint, they are similarly wide in their presentations, in their sound staging. The T fills in laterally a little bit better. It's not as three blobby in its presentation, but it's it's not as defined in its imaging. Like all of the sonic images feel a little bit more stretched out on that one, whereas the Vulkan does a better job of saying, like when it's within one of its 3 blobs, the Vulkan does a better job of saying it's right here, okay, and that sort of thing. So it's probably more of a separation thing, where the Vulkan has better separation between sonic images than the Tea does, okay. But I enjoy listening to both of them from a sonic standpoint, but I'm going to start taking the Vulkan over the Tea because of the comfort issue. They are close enough in sound that I still enjoy the sound of the Vulkan, but it's just the comfort for me is going to win out there easily. All right, really quickly, because I am a headphone guy, comparing these to some full-size headphones, I pulled the Hi-Fi Mandeva Pro off the shelf to do a quick comparison, because that's a $200 open back planar magnetic headphone, and I just wanted to see like where do these stack up, like where technicality wise, excuse me, where does it fall in? Because the Vulkans are definitely going to beat just about any other full-size headphone around the price in terms of bass presence, slam, rumble, that sort of thing. Like, because there is so much less air that it needs to move just already being in your ears, like the bass performance there is pretty impressive, okay? But I thought the Deva Pro matched it in terms of overall resolution and did a better job of the staging and the spatial aspects. And then they were about dead even on overall timbre, I think, too, which spells a little bit of a problem for the Vulkan in terms of value, because again, the Deva Pro is only $200, right? So I mean, that's where that comes from in terms of a value question. But let's go. Well, let me just finish some quick comparisons with full-size headphones. But like, the DUNU Vulkan is not going to catch the DT880, the Beyerdynamic DT880 in spatial presentation. It's not going to catch, say, the Sennheiser HD6XX in timbre or that sort of thing. So there is that. But on the value question for IEMs, we do have to ask, we do have to realize that we are talking about different product categories, right? Like, an IEM is going to be able to do some things that headphones simply can't do, especially from a use case standpoint. Like, you can put IEMs in your pocket and carry them with you wherever you go. They are much, much more travel friendly. And then there are certain like on-the-go use cases where they just cannot be beaten. So there are definitely some ergonomic and use case reasons why the value proposition that I'm talking about here will still shift back to the DUNU Vulkan or a similarly priced IEM, okay, over those things. And again, it doesn't sound bad. It really doesn't. It sounds pretty good. I don't have a ton of other experience with IEMs to know if $380 is exactly a fair price for these, but it seems like it probably is. Okay, so we'll go ahead and leave it there as far as comparisons go, and probably as value talk goes. Now, again, like the last thing I want to bring up, again, I mentioned this briefly, and that is that the MMCX connector does feel like it loosens up in time. I don't know if that will be a long-term problem, and or if replacing a wire often is something you'll have to do with MMCX. I've heard complaints in the past about MMCX and longevity and that sort of thing. I don't know if that will apply here or not, but it seems like it might, just from my own experience and how quickly it is loosening, just taking the stock cable, plugging it in and out of this connector here. That may be an issue. We'll see. Okay. All right, but I think I can go ahead and leave my DUNU Vulkan review right here. I am Wave Theory. Thank you for watching this video. Please give a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Check out my Patreon, check out my PayPal, and do all of those things you do to support YouTube channels. Coming back with some full-size headphone reviews and headphone gear reviews in the very near future. As always, enjoy the music.